The Zephyrian guards had made a mistake. In their arrogance, they believed that carbon-based life forms were inherently weak, that flesh and bone could never match the strength of their crystalline exoskeletons. They had studied human anatomy, cataloged their muscle density, measured their bone structure. On paper, humans were unremarkable. They were wrong. Marcus Chen had been imprisoned for 3 cycles now, chained to the obsidian walls of the Zephyrian detention facility on Kepler 442b. His crime? Refusing to reveal the location of the human colony ships during the initial contact wars. The aliens had expected him to break within days, like the other species they had conquered. Instead, Marcus had endured every torture they could devise. His only response, a sardonic smile that seemed to infuriate his captors more than any scream ever could. The chains were made of titanium composite, designed to hold beings 3 times stronger than the average human. The Zephyrians had calculated the tensile strength needed, factored in safety margins, and declared the restraints unbreakable. They had never encountered a species that could override its own biological limiters through sheer force of will. Commander Vexithari observed the human through the translucent barrier, her 4 arms folded in what passed for contemplation among her kind. The prisoner's vital signs had been erratic for the past hour, his body temperature fluctuating wildly. Perhaps the creature was finally succumbing to the neural disruptors they had been subjecting him to. "Increase the pain threshold by 30%, she ordered her subordinate. "If this human expires, we still have 17 others to work with." But Marcus wasn't dying. He was remembering. He thought of his daughter's laugh echoing through their habitat dome on New Terra. He remembered his wife's final message before the Zephyrian fleet arrived, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "Be the wall between them and us, Marcus. Be the wall that never breaks." The neural disruptors sent fresh waves of agony through his nervous system, designed to overwhelm any biological organism's pain tolerance. Marcus had felt it 1,000 times now, and each time he found that place inside himself where the pain couldn't reach, the place where love lived, where duty burned brighter than any torture. Something deep in his genetic memory stirred. Millennia of survival instincts, of ancestors who had faced down predators 10 times their size, who had endured ice ages and plagues and wars. The accumulated rage of a species that had clawed its way from the caves to the stars, not through superiority, but through pure, stubborn refusal to surrender. The first chain didn't break so much as explode. The titanium composite, rated for 12,000 pounds of pressure, shattered like glass as Marcus's left arm yanked free. Alarms immediately began shrieking throughout the facility. Vexithari's eyes widened as she watched the impossible happen. The human's muscle fibers were tearing themselves apart and rebuilding in real time, his adrenal system flooding his bloodstream with enough chemicals to kill a lesser being. "Impossible," she breathed. "The calculations—" Marcus ripped his right arm free, then his legs. The chains that had held him for 3 cycles lay in smoking ruins around his feet. Blood ran freely from his wrists where the metal had torn his flesh, but he didn't seem to notice. When he looked up at the observation window, Vexithari saw something that made her crystalline heart skip a beat. His eyes weren't the eyes of a tortured prisoner. They were the eyes of an apex predator that had just remembered what it was. The first guard through the door met Marcus's fist and crumpled like tinfoil. The second managed to raise his plasma rifle before Marcus tore it from his hands and drove the barrel through his chest plate. The third began to scream. It was that scream, high-pitched, terrified, utterly alien, that echoed through the corridors. and told every Zephyrian in the facility that something had gone catastrophically wrong. This wasn't the roar of a beast or the battle cry of a warrior. This was the sound of a predator species discovering they were prey. Marcus moved through the facility like a force of nature. The Zephyrians had studied human anatomy but failed to understand human psychology. They had never encountered a species that could literally choose to ignore pain, that could push their bodies beyond physical limits through willpower alone. They had never faced beings who could tap into millions of years of evolutionary fury and channel it with tactical precision. Every corridor he passed through became a testament to what humans were capable of when pushed beyond their breaking point. The Zephyrians' advanced technology meant nothing when confronted with pure primitive savagery guided by intelligence. Their energy weapons were torn from their hands, their armor cracked open, their retreat cut off by a single human who refused to be stopped. Vexathari found herself backed against the central command console, watching as her entire security force was systematically dismantled by one impossible human. Her military training screamed at her to fight, but her survival instincts, older and wiser, told her to run. "Please," she whispered as Marcus approached, his fists still dripping with luminescent Zephyrian blood. "We can negotiate. We can—" "Where are my people?" Marcus's voice was barely recognizable, raw from screaming and roughened by inhaled plasma residue. "Sub-level 7, she gasped. "Cell blocks A through F. They're alive. I swear they're alive." Marcus nodded once, then turned away. Vexathari almost collapsed with relief until she realized he was heading for the communication console. His fingers, slick with blood, worked with surprising delicacy as he activated the facility's emergency broadcast system. "This is Sergeant Marcus Chen, Terran Colonial Marines." His voice echoed through every speaker in the facility. "Any human who can hear this, the way is clear. Follow the screams." As if summoned by his words, the sound of more breaking chains began to echo from the lower levels. The Zephyrians had learned something about human anatomy after all. They had learned that when one human breaks free, the others follow. Vexathari watched in growing horror as her perfect prison became a charnel house. The humans weren't just escaping. They were taking the facility apart, piece by piece, turning their captors' own technology against them. What had begun as an interrogation had become a lesson in why humanity had survived every extinction event their homeworld could throw at them. They didn't just endure, they adapted, they overcame, and they never, ever forgot to come back for their own. The last thing Vexathari heard before the facility's power grid finally gave out was the sound of human voices singing, some ancient battle hymn from their homeworld, echoing through corridors painted with alien blood. It was then she understood the truth her people had failed to grasp. Humans weren't the galaxy's strongest species, or its smartest, or its most advanced. But they were something far more dangerous than any of those things. They were unbreakable. And now they were free.